The panic had not spread that far yet, but the people decided to migrate. Leaving their homes behind and moving away with their cattle was not easy at all. Many were now spending more time with the retired schoolmaster Hamid, the only noble man in the village. The thumping of the tanks moving around the border areas would wreak havoc on the nerves of the residents, and they would turn to Master Hamid's Haveli. One evening, one of the villagers drew near to the schoolmaster and said, Master Ji, I have heard that the government has banned hunting. Indeed, said another, giving voice to the villagers' thoughts. Some officials even went to Lala's big mansion. They told him that firing for the purpose of hunting can be risky in these circumstances. The Sikh soldiers are already on the border, they said. How are they to know if it's one of us shooting a deer or if it's the soldiers? So, what did Lala say? Master Ji asked as he turned to look at the villager, taking a puff from his hookah as he spoke. I could not listen, he stammered, shifting uncomfortably at the question. I was too busy moving about, serving food, etc. I have also heard, said another, staring directly at the schoolmaster, that they have appointed Lala as protector, as guardian and leader in these troubled times. Ah, but Lala owns us, you see. Master Hamid stared at his audience. He owns everything. He owns the land, the water, the masjid. He even owns our batak. We have no control over things, no say in war, no say in peace. We are nothing. Just some villagers, farmers, travelers in this life. Our fates are in Lala's hands, and in the hands of the one above. And why would Lala care? A depressed villager asked. He fed splendid food to the guests, even opened a few bottles. And these big shots, they forget everything over drinks. Lala laughed out loud, telling his guests that he would talk to the villagers, but also said that all's fair in love and war. And then what happened? A villager asked, drawing closer to his friend. What do you think happened? They ate, drank, and went their own ways. The driver unlocked the Pajero, and Lala, well, he wore his suit and got in with his guards, and then off they went towards the city. A few days passed. Master Ji's visitors had decreased in number. In the evening, shopkeepers who had set up shop outside the village and the few men who had acquired government jobs would cycle back to their homes. On their way, they would be stopped by curious gossipers who would ask for the latest headlines. Having thus acquired a quick rundown of the newspapers, the villagers could feel the tensions rising as the sounds of war knocked slowly on the fragile doors of peace. Particularly concerning were the speeches given by A.B. Vajpayee and his supporters. Panting excitedly, the men would then rush to Master Ji's house, where they would unload their thoughts and opinions over hookah and some sweets. The schoolmaster, seeing emotions rise like the bubbling of a hookah, had once remarked that difficult times are a man's test. Have you not seen, he said, that birds and animals huddle together in a storm? In these moments of confusion, anything is possible. One small mistake, the tiniest bit of mischief, the smallest spark can become the flame that can burn our lives and our peace to the ground. It was around this time that the masjids made an announcement. Everywhere, in all of the border villages, the same message repeated itself again and again. These are uncertain times. The enemy could strike us at any moment. He is willing to do anything, and his spies may have already infiltrated our ranks. Beware of strangers. Watch them carefully. Protect our weaknesses in this time of strife. The Maulvi Sahab of Noorkot said something similar. His head covered by his turban, his chest swollen, he roared into the microphone. Gentlemen, he said, the unbeliever is treacherous. He is a niggard with a devilish mind who wants to attack us once again in the dark night. The Islamic world is surrounded by enemies. We have 1,000 foes all around. But who can stand in front of our faith? Victory is our fate. Defeat is theirs. Our brave soldiers stand between us. If you see a spy, teach him a lesson that he never forgets. Wajpai, if you can hear me, listen. Try whatever mischief you want to. We will quash it like we will quash you. This, of course, was no call to war, but its effect was no less potent. The possibility of danger, of being attacked from within, created even more unrest. The serpent had entered the garden, and the poison of doubt was running in the very veins of the land. Some people started packing. Others wondered about their relatives. Yet others stared blankly at the cracked walls of their homes. There were no telephones. The announcements had been made, which meant that there was not enough time to write letters. One side of the village was landlocked and there was no danger, or not yet at least. On the other side, empty land. But land where rainwater had collected and the landowners were now growing rice. Leaving immediately could be disastrous. The people stared at each other, hoping to find consolation. What else could be done? Untouched by all this were the 4 villagers who sat in Lala's mansion. These 4 were known locally as the Hunters, and were busy, even now, sharing the exploits of their hunting dogs. They were proudly narrating the adventures of their dogs, sometimes their teeth snapping in the air, or ruthlessly grabbing the neck of a cat, a rabbit, or a ringed turtle dove. Their sense of smell was impeccable, and was praised endlessly by their owners. Afternoons were extremely hot, and so the 4 would resort to the coolest part of the building. Back there, they had a number of rooms for tying up the animals. To the right, there was a small room for tractor tires, engine parts, diesel, spare wiring, spades, pickaxes, and a bunch of other tools. Right beside it was a cabin, divided into 2 parts. One in which the 4 now sat, and the other that now housed some broken plows, a yoke, an old sword that once belonged to Lala's grandfather, the elder Lala, and had tasted much blood in 1947, some sickles, and an old wooden frame that was once used to draw water from the well. It was also said that the cabin was haunted, that it was frequented by jinns and demons. Many servants, in fact, had heard strange voices, male and female, coming from this cabin. Under the dim light of an old yellow bulb, one of the hunters expressed anger at the old fan and its cooling. Taking off his dirty shirt, he hung it on the wall and then turned to his friends. "Yar, it's too hot in here. Let's go to the river and swim." His friend, Makka, laughed at this and said, "Seriously, Jinwata, even the heat would run away from you. With a body of stone, do you still feel hot?" At this, their third friend, Rangu, placed his right hand under his armpit and produced strange sounds by waving his left elbow. He smiled mockingly at Jinwata, making fun of him. He was blind in one eye and was considered the village jester. He would often make others laugh with these armpit sounds, his elbow moving up and down like an old-fashioned water pump. He was even proud of being Lala's lackey. Makka had once served as a caretaker of Lala's Lahore mansion, which his family had been looking after since 1980. He now worked as a tractor driver and was excited about his promotion. The 4th and final member of this gang was known as Jeru Kedu. He had lost a leg by accidentally triggering a landmine. He had been sneaking across the border to hunt, and even though he had lost his leg, he never lost his passion for hunting. His father and grandfather had been Lala's accountants, while their ancestors had been loyal servants even before the partition. 10 years ago, Rangu's father had been killed in a feud involving Lala's family. Since then, Rangu, without caring for himself or his well-being, had devoted himself to Lala's service. The villagers said that he could do anything for Lala, and that he would carry out all orders, good or bad, without hesitation and in all probability ruthlessly and with pleasure. The 4 hunters were famous in all the surrounding villages for their friendship and loyalty towards Lala. After work, the 4 of them would spend time hunting or playing cards, and whenever Lala wished to hunt, these 4 were his companions. They were such skilled hunters, well trained by their Lala, that they could smell the prey even before the hunting dogs. 2 of the 4, in fact, were even said to be among Lala's close confidants. When the hunting trip would end, the 4 would place the prey in the pajero and drive it back to the mansion, without leaving any hints. Inside, they would retreat to their cabin and recall their exploits from the trip, all of them laying claim to the greatest kill, like 4 jackals sinking their teeth into a young deer and then arguing over the division. Their dogs, too, would participate in this. They would bark, growl, and then snap at the spoils, pulling at dead skin to throw at their feet. Today, like any other day, they were sitting in the same cabin. Suddenly, some noise was heard in the street. Jinvatta glanced about the room, surprised. "Oi, Rangu," he said. "See what's going on." The noise, meanwhile, had gotten louder, so they flung themselves, all 4 of them, to the window. Outside, some young boys from the village had formed a mob. Fleeing from them was a lone figure, a young nomad girl who made and sold wooden horses, called Gugu Ghode. They were following her and screaming, "A spy! A spy!" Makka winked at Rangu and said, "Hey, go see what's happening." As soon as he opened the gates, Rangu placed his hand under his armpit and proceeded to make the same sounds. The mob immediately stopped shouting, and the street was filled with the boys' laughter. The post-monsoon humid weather and its heat had by now filled the air with sweat and stench, and this multiplied the vulnerability of the nomad girl. The devilish serpent snapped again, making doubt and suspicion hang in people's breaths. Onlookers and whisperers could be seen, loitering around the street corners. What was going on? The nomad girl glanced around her in panic. With the cloth sack of wooden toys resting on her head, she looked here and there like a dove caught in a hunter's trap. She gazed at the people around her, as if asking them one question: "Spy?" When she realized that she was being labeled as an Indian spy, she trembled with fear. She pleaded and swore on her innocence. She even opened her little sack. But in return, she received the same sounds from Rangu's armpit and bellowing howls of laughter. Rangu turned around and looked at his friends, who signaled a message. "Hurry up, will you? You're establishing a court out there." He understood. With his one eye, he watched the nomad girl wipe the sweat off her face. He smelled fresh sweat. He said, "We must search her. She might have hidden a wireless somewhere." Then, turning to the people, he said, "Wait here. We will search her, and then we'll decide. If she's a spy, well, the police station is not far." On the mention of police, the nomad girl assented to being searched. She didn't realize what was happening. With her sack on her head, she vanished into the labyrinth of the mansion. Seeking her hidden wireless, 8 different hands started dancing over her, like small spiders scuttling on a dark floor. Outside, one could still hear the echoing cries. "A spy! A spy!" She was taken to the old cabin, where the old light bulb still fought the dark. She was told to sit in the pile of old junk, where the sack that had rested so firmly on her head was removed. The shirts had already disappeared. An unseen signal turned off the light. In the dark, the nomad girl could not even tell how many men were around her. She stared, terrified, at the dark, mumbling and pleading to be freed. All of a sudden, a lali, a common manna, panicking and screaming, broke into the din of the hunt. It had been trapped in when they had hastily closed the doors. When the lights were turned off, she panicked and began fluttering and crashing about, screaming and wailing of her captivity. Jeru stumbled for a bit, his eyes red with rage. "Rangu," he growled, "twist her neck, will you? Shut her up!" Rangu let the door open slightly and then chased the bird around, making the same noises from under his armpit to scare the bird away. The manna glanced one last time at the nomad girl and flew out of the door, screaming loudly. In the little light that had snuck into the room, the nomad girl looked around her. She saw four faces, all of them alike, and behind them she saw, hanging from the cabin roof, many long and hideous tongues that were slowly reaching out. It seemed as if spit were dripping down from the ceiling, with a smell so strong and hideous that the cabin itself would have shaken. Jinvatta picked up the old sword, and pointing it to her neck, he spoke. "We will cut you in 1,000,000 pieces. Just do as I say." But why be silent? That little bird had left her with an important message. 3 pairs of hands pulled at her, but she would not move. She lay face down on the floor, refusing to obey. Her mouth let out a perpetual scream. Outside, Rangu assured the people that it was nothing more than a search. If the people would grow weary, he would make the same sounds from his armpit to amuse them. Rangu heard a whistle from inside. He knew at once that the search was almost over. It would now be his turn. Rushing inside, he entered the cabin with a question. "Has the problem been solved?" "Solved? Nothing is solved. How could it be solved when she doesn't shut up?" Jinvatta looked furious. "Go," he said. "Talk to her. Tell her to pipe down. Tell her to stop resisting, or else she'll lose her life. I swear I will wring her neck." Closing the door shut, Rangu made his way to the back. Looking at his victim, he spoke. "Oh, look at this. She is lying all straight. I will give her a calf from the herd, only if she quiets down." The nomad girl was lying still on her stomach. Her eyes closed, she had done her best to stay untouched. The first 3 had pulled at her, torn her clothes, broken her bangles till they hurt her arms. This 4th person's words pierced her, like the broken bangles, into a broken heart. Lying with her face to the floor, she could feel the blood seeping into her nostrils. For a minute, she felt that the village huts would no longer wait for her return. Her eyes watered, as if the bangles they had broken had now melted and flown like grief from her eyes. Jeru Kedu, like Rangu before him, was trying to convince the crowd. He held a bamboo under his arm, speaking with authority. "Do not worry, she will speak. She'll even tell us the names of their dogs. We'll not be able to pretend for long. She will tell us everything." First Rangu and now Jeru. The women and even the men were going back to their work. It was probably all an act, an elaborate fraud. Some of the boys, bent on mischief, stayed on to chat with Jeru, making jokes with obvious double meanings about the interrogation. After some time, the sensible lot started to leave, saying, "Is she even a spy?" The nomad girl spread her hand outwards to adjust her tattered headcloth. She felt something sharp. It was a sickle with sharp teeth and an edge. Quickly, she hid it under her body while holding it with her right hand. Rangu, foolishly, had taken her frightful silence to be consent. Rubbing one hand on his stomach, he leapt down towards the floor, only to be met by a sharp pain that went all the way out through his back. A painful scream echoed out from the cabin, reaching the nearby streets. The three hunters burst into the room. Turning on the light, they first leapt in the direction of the scream. A moment later, they turned back. Jumping over what remained of Rangu, they turned off the light bulb and rushed to the outer gate, like prey fleeing for its life. For a minute, silence pervaded the air. Those who were startled by the screams and those who had left were now returning. The hunters could not have imagined that Rangu would fall face first onto a sickle. They had barely managed to say his name, Rangu, when the nomad girl, wrapped in her tattered clothes, her cloth sack resting on her head, came out. Wide-eyed, Jirukedu, Makha, and Jinvatta stared at the street and then at the nomad girl. Her clothes were obviously stained with blood. What should they do? What could they say? Nothing made sense for a moment. Then, stumbling about on his one foot, Jerukedu burst out in a quivering voice. "Spy! A spy!" The men and women of the village saw the cloth sack ripping open and the wooden toys falling from the girl's head. Lala and the crowd in the street were seen making the same strange sounds with their armpits. "A spy! A spy! A spy! A spy!"